Well, thank you. It's Talking Technical again, and always a busy show and plenty requests. And this week it's all South African shares. It looks like that the people are sick and tired of the American markets because they're only going up, and it's just momentum. But on our side, it's maybe a different story. Let's start off with Capco. Jay wanted to know about Capco, and I'm looking here at the weekly chart. Now, if you look at a lot of these, as you can almost say, companies, there's an interesting scenario. Although the economics and everything is not good for them, at least they're not at making new lows again. Now, if you look at Capco here, this is a weekly chart. Jay, if you see here that low of the share was around 20 Rand 70. That was in November. But since November, the share picked up nicely and it gave a sharp move up. But now it looks like it's losing momentum. And if I look at this chart, there's something that I'm picking up here. And this is this little line. That little line tells me that maybe there is some downward pressure on the stock price again. But if you look at the chart here, you can see here that although we above this low, we're holding above this support line. Now, this support line is quite important because this line is at 26 Rand and 78 cents. If we move below 26.78, there's something interesting. If you look at this chart, you can see this is a tiny left shoulder. There's a head, and there's the right shoulder. Now, if this play out, and this is what we call a head and shoulder formation, it can maybe take the share all the way back to this line, and that is 25 Rand and 23 cents. So, if you look at Capco, I will either say wait for this tiny head and shoulder to play out before you enter, or the other thing is what you can do is wait for the momentum to pick up again, and if the momentum can break above this little line, what do we see then? Then we see a tiny, what we call a flag formation. Now, a flag formation is usually a turnaround formation to say to you, it can go higher. But the important thing here, I think it needs to break above this resistance line, and that sits at 28 Rand and 70 cents. So if it breaks above 28.70, we can say, yes, it was a low, it was another low, but it went higher. So it's a beautiful higher low scenario where investors buying on weakness. So I hope I'm right here, because Capco is at least above its all-time low, and maybe things can turn around. But the important thing is this little line here. If it breaks below this line and this head and shoulder starts to play out, I would rather say, Jay, don't buy the stock and wait for it to turn around before you get into it. Well, let's have a look at Prosus. Now, Prosus is one of those favorites of the market, and Nelly asked about Prosus. Let's have a look at Prosus. I just want to get it quickly here. Prosus. There you are. Remember, this is now one of that all-time favorites. Nothing can go wrong with Naspers or Prosus, but I'm seeing something very interesting here. Nelly, if I look at Prosus here, Prosus tells me that there is a beautiful abandoned baby. Now, what is an abandoned baby? That means if the share goes up all the way, like it did from, let's say, from December, and it went going up all the way, and suddenly there's a beautiful breakaway gap right at the top. Usually we talk about an exhaustion gap, but let's call this a breakaway gap. It goes all the way to the top, and then you see this, like, you can almost say a hammer right at the top. Now, usually a hammer is a warning formation, or a warning candle. It tells you that it bursted up, and then on this high, there was some sellers coming in and locking in some profit. And let's just see, where was this high? That high was, can you believe it, 1,969 Rand and 82 cents. But what happened? The following day, Prosus also opened up lower, and it gave another gap. And if you see that now, suddenly I want to show you here, then you're sitting here with what we call a gap across. Here you are, you can see that. Let's just draw it in for you there. And that's quite interesting. If you look at this now, then suddenly you will see what I'm talking about. There's that little gap, And there you can see there's no candles in this gap, or there's no shadows in that gap. And then you call it a abandoned baby. Now, a abandoned baby is a negative candle formation. And while this gap is open, that means that the momentum for Prosus will be to the downside. And where is this gap? This gap is between 1,881 Rand and 60 cents and 1,910 Rand. So while this gap is open and while Prosus cannot close this gap, the momentum to the downside is clearly with us. There's something else to see here. Let's have a look here at this support line. This support line from, you can almost say from December, is keeping the share going up. Look at it. That was the low. The share went up. It came to test it. Went up. It came to test it again. And every time that it gets close to this line, there's some buyer. So the important thing is when this support line starts to turn into a negative or into a resistance, so the share cannot move above this line anymore, we can see some weakness, because then the trend since December will be broken, and then we can maybe see a tiny sell-off in the stock. Because why I'm saying tiny? Because nobody believes that Naspers or Prosus can ever go lower. This line is an important line, and that sits at 1,769 Rand and 60 cents. Let's look at Liu. Liu asked me about Kumba. Let's have a look. Kumba, one of those favorite stalwarts. I mean, iron ore producer. There you are. Let's have a look at it. This is the weekly chart. And if you look at Kumba, beautiful rally from March last year, from 225 Rand all the way to above 650 Rand. Can you believe it? In almost 9 months. And look at these beautiful rallies. If it kicks off, it goes all the way straight to the top. Look at the beautiful, strong rallies. And what do we see here? It's the first time that the share is dropping a little bit. If you look at this chart, and remember, if you are a long-term viewer, or a long-term trader or investor, you will probably look at a support line on a weekly chart, on weekly closes, to keep you happy. And if you look at this chart, you can see it's still above this trend line. The momentum is still to the top. But I'm seeing something else here that worries me a little bit. And the reason why I'm looking at it, when I see a share, and I'm doing that for many years, when I see a share that's got this beautiful rallies, and it just goes up in a straight line, and I suddenly see there's a turnaround, I'm looking for some warning signals to just warn me a little bit and tempted me to say, listen, just be a little bit careful. The share can maybe surprise you and pull back a little bit. Now, if you look at this line, and this line waits at 586 Rand, if this support line turns into a resistance, can you see there's also a resistance line at the top where this gap of this formation is almost narrowing? That tells us there's a rising wedge in the play. And if that comes into play and the stock breaks below that support line, we can maybe see this wonderful share. Let's just draw in that line, then you can see where I get my target from. There you are. Then it can take the share back maybe to this support line. There's the support at 482.29. And can you say that it can maybe, do you hear that I say it can maybe reach for that line 482? The reason why I'm saying that, technical analysis is not an exact science. It is, yes, a very good method to look at prices and to get into a share and get out of a share, but sometimes you look at the stock and you say, but it must go to 488 Rand and 24 cents, and then it turns around at 488 and 50 cents, and then you say, oh, it doesn't work. Remember, you can maybe be out 30 cents or 40 cents on a share of 600 Rand. I mean, that is minute, but you can use it as a wonderful tool to guide you into your decisions. Well, let's have a look at the last one, Anglo Platinum. Now, Solly asked about Anglo Platinum. He said, this is a wonderful company and he loves it. But I just want to have a look here. Well, look at this. This is a daily chart, and this was the day of Tuesday. If you look at this chart, look at these last few candles here. And I always look at that as also, if you get these big candles and suddenly another big candle, then it tells you that there's some investors that's not 100% sure what to do. Now, Solly, if I look at this chart, what do I see? I first of all see here, there's a very important support line. There you are. There it is. And that is sitting at 1,475 Rand and 26 cents. Sorry, I seem seeing something else. Look at this ugly bearish engulfing candle. That's negative. I also see that the share went up to test this previous high. Look at it. That high was at 1,644.25. And that one was at 1,644 Rand and 19 cents. Almost right at the top. And this you can almost call a double top. And where will this double top come into play? The moment the low of this 1,475.26 turns into a resistance, then you can see that Anglo Plat makes a double top and it can maybe go back to the downside. And where's my target? Let's have a look at my target here. You just take that and you extend that a little bit. I just want to use that, and then I take that one and I bring it back. You can take the share down to that low, and there you are, 1,305 Rand and 55 cents. So let's have a look on Anglo Plat. Favorite share. This double top scenario worries me a little bit, Solly. I will not buy it now. I'll sit on my hands, and if I need to lock in profits, it will be below that 1,475 level I just mentioned. Well, visit our website www.fransdeklerk.com and we will chat again.